Welcome, everybody. I'm Josh Schneps, publisher of Brownstoner. We're just going to get started in 1 minute. We're just pulling in our other panelists. All right. Jeronimo, welcome. I believe we're just waiting on Julieta. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We're going to get started in just 1 minute. We're just pulling in one of our other panelists. I thank everybody for your patience. We have a great program here for everyone interested in renovations. Again, my name is Josh Schneps, and I'm the publisher of Brownstoner. I want to thank, of course, Bolster and all our panelists. Our exclusive sponsor is Bolster. They're a data-driven design build company whose specialties include gut renovations of Brooklyn townhouses and brownstones. So I know our Brownstoner readers are passionate about that topic. Today's going to be an informative session discussing everything you need to know when it comes to home renovation in the New York City area, especially during the pandemic. So I think we all know we're in unique times right now, and we're happy to be able to connect with you through this webinar and be able to provide insights from the Bolster team. We're still waiting to bring in one of our other panelists, but I think in the meantime, Anna Karp is here, the Bolster CEO and co-founder. So Anna, if you don't mind maybe just saying hello to everybody and introducing yourself, that would be great.
Hello, everybody. It's very nice to be here. And thank you so much for taking the time to attend this webinar. The thing that we love the most at Bolster is talking and working with our homeowners on the renovation projects. And of course, when you're dreaming about a renovation, planning a renovation, or getting started, you're kind of at the most exciting part of the project because you know that you will go a transformation in your built environment and I think also internally because you will basically improve your environment and update it into who you are and who you want to be. So I'm very pleased to be here with Jeronimo and Julieta. Both their names are pronounced with a H, so feel free to call them Julieta and Jeronimo. And yeah, we're here to help. Thank you for having us as well. It's amazing, Joshua. I really appreciate it. And Elizabeth.
Pleasure to have you here. This is great information for everyone. Jeronimo, would you introduce yourself, please?
Definitely. Thank you very much for the intro, Josh. So my name is Jeronimo or Jeronimo, whatever is easier for you guys. I handle all of the pricing and procurement at Bolster. So that means that I am your numbers guys. Whether that means getting the right number for your budget for whatever your renovation is, or if that is finding the right discount to get you the best products out there, I'm your guy at Bolster that does all of that.
Terrific. I know we're still looking to have Julieta join, but I think, we'll continue and we'll introduce her when she joins us, and we appreciate all the participants' patience. But as we all know, Zoom has become the new normal.
Right.
And I think all of us have our obstacles. I don't know how many times I use it 10 times a day and I still talk when I'm muted. So this is great information because everyone knows that when you're doing a home renovation, it can provoke a lot of anxiety and it's a huge investment and you want to do it right. And Bolster, again, are the experts, and so glad you're here with us today. So as Bolster's done gut renovations of a Park Slope brownstone, a cosmetic renovation of a Fort Greene apartment, and a partial renovation of a Windsor Terrace house. And that's just to name a few of your projects because, you've really done so many. So Anna, where does it make the most sense for homeowners to invest their money when it comes to renovations?
I saw that question, and thank you for sending them in advance. I think that's a great question. At the beginning of the process, we, as the Bolster team and with the homeowner, whom we consider to be a part of our team, we have a vague idea of what the renovation will be about, what the budget, we have a target budget, which we take very seriously. And we also have a lot of unknowns like the compliance aspects and the construction challenges. So in order to determine how best to spend the budget on a renovation, we go through a very exhaustive first stage, which we call the sketches stage, where we actually interview the homeowner, as it were, and ask them about what they want to accomplish with the renovation, what their target budget is, and then we provide different options. Usually we do an option, which is what they want to do, like the letter to Santa Claus, another option, which is what we recommend they do, and a third one, which is like, you know, if your granny just inherited you or you just won the lottery, what would you do? And based on those options, we're able to create a project that is viable, considering all the circumstances. And I'll give you a very clear example of this. Sometimes homeowners with a brownstone come to us and let's say they want to do a 3-story extension, but the time frame and the complication of a 3-story extension takes them beyond their target budget and beyond the time frame that they want to spend on a renovation. In the sketches phase, which is really honestly, even before we actually are engaged to do the design, we're able to work with the homeowners to basically figure out the actual viable project that they can have from a design, compliance, build, and time frame point of view. So someone that wants to do a 3-story extension and would have to underpin very early on would end up maybe with a 2-story extension and a full gut without having to underpin and go above their budget. This is very important because in Bolster, we do a lot of iterative pre-construction processes, both taking into consideration finance, but also the condition of the property. And that integrated approach helps us have a viable project from the beginning. And therefore, going back to your question, from day one, we know what we're investing the money on, because we don't go off in wild goose chase of what we would like to do. We go into what's the viable project with the right scope, with the right compliance process for the target budget of the homeowner. And I really can't emphasize how serious this is, because homeowners are basically doing their second largest investment ever, at least the ones that work with Bolster. And they want to do so with the certainty that what they're planning can be built. And it breaks my heart when we get homeowners that engage an architect first, for example, and then come to us and their design is 30% more than their target budget. Or we have to go through complicated compliance processes in order to make the project viable. And it's not due to the architects, it's due to the way the industry works. So in order to avoid that problem in Bolster, we focus the investment in what matters most, while giving the homeowners a home that they would love, like a renovation that they like. So that's the long answer.
That was very informative. Well, Julieta has joined us. Do you want to just say hello and introduce yourself, please?
I'm sorry, I had some problems connecting. Thank you very much. My name is Julieta Dominguez. I'm a build manager assigned to the Brooklyn area. I am a trained architect, and here at Bolster, my job is project management, which means I coordinate, I organize, and supervise the projects so they can be delivered on time and on budget.
Well, that's important. Everybody wants that, on time and on budget. That's for sure. Well, why don't we jump into a question for you then? What are the typical renovations you see people undertaking in Brooklyn now?
Well, the typical renovations in Brooklyn are gut renovations of brownstones and townhouses. Brooklyn has a beautiful neighborhood with gorgeous brownstones. But most of them are very old and need an update in their infrastructure, which means these houses need new electrical wiring, new plumbing, new mechanical systems, roofing, and in most of the cases, they will need a structural reinforcement. Bolster is specialized in major renovations, which mostly involve gutting homes, because these beautiful homes with their unique character and flavor deserve to be brought to their original splendor, right? Maybe with a modern twist. Bolster has an integrated design and build process, which means that as a build manager, I am familiar with the project since day one, and I visit the properties throughout the design period when we start build. A lot of the matters have already been ironed out, which free us up to the gut renovations with full confidence.
Thank you so much. I want to also just remind our audience here, feel free to ask questions. We'll be asking questions throughout, but if you have other specific questions, just click on the Q&A, ask the questions. And if we don't even get to them on the webinar, we can reach out to the Bolster team afterwards and get those answered for you. But you can also feel free to reach out to them afterwards, because obviously that's why they're here. They want to talk to you and support you. So Jeronimo, going to you, Anna touched on a lot of this, but how should homeowners prioritize their budget when they're renovating?
I think that's a great question, Josh. And I think the priority should always be starting with the structural elements of the home, right? So usually those will be your numbers for electrical, plumbing, mechanical, concrete, and steel. Those are kind of like the 5 big numbers that everybody should prioritize and know. There's not really a big opportunity to value engineer on those unless they're willing to make some sacrifices. But I know this can be sometimes frustrating with homeowners because they love talking about furniture, finishing, and equipment, which is all of the nice things that they're going to be adding to the home. But I think the priority should be always in the structural elements first. You want to do those one time and you want to do those right. There's always room for improvement with your appliances. There's a really wide range there. So the price of your project can be wide range just by choosing one brand to the other brand. So I think the priority should be stuck to the structural elements. And I think that's a good way to keep in mind those 5 guys: electrical, plumbing, masonry, concrete, steel, and mechanical. Those are the 5 guys that I like making sure that everybody prioritizes on.
Thank you. Those are good points. You know, we have a question here from the audience, which I think ties well into that, because we know that some of the most beautiful townhomes are also in landmarked areas. So how does that potentially, this is again a question from one of our audience members, but how can that potentially add to the budget?
Anna, I believe, wants to take that.
I just wanted to say that every project is different. Landmarks ties to the budget in very complex ways. I mean, Jeronimo can probably go more into detail, but the overview of the process is the following. You are going to spend more time on compliance, and you will have, or you may have, added requirements. So again, the very important thing here is to work very hard on the pre-construction process in order to establish and know exactly what you will need to do, and to allow yourself enough time and to have the right team in terms of design in order to be able to get through the landmark hurdles, because depending on the scope, there can be varied. There isn't one typical landmarks project because there isn't a typical renovation. So I think with landmarks, it's very important to be aware that you have an added level of complexity, not unsurmountable. And in terms of pricing, I think there are third parties, right, Jeronimo, that third-party costs can add up. And in Bolster, what we like to do is basically treat the project as a whole. So in estimating, and Jeronimo can talk a little bit more about this, we include design, build, and we get an estimated range of compliance of third-party costs as well, so that homeowners know a total cost of the renovation rather than being given all the bits and pieces separately. So do you want to expand on landmarks, Jero, in terms of cost?
Sure. To your question, Christine, I think that the most important thing is that you're going to have to, this won't add in your cost in terms of the construction. It might, but it's not always the case. It really would add to the compliance part. And what I think Anna is trying to say, and I would love to reiterate, is this usually happens because your architect is going to have a longer process with landmarks. There's time that is required to handle that process. And then it depends on what landmarks might come back and say. But if landmark requires a specific window installer, which for example, that's something very common, or a specific type of masonry, then that is gonna have to be embedded in your budget. It might not be the way that you had thought about it, but it's something that will certainly have to be taken into account. So it's hard to give you a straightforward answer, but I don't think that it affects your budget that much. It wouldn't be a really big impact unless Caroline is also asking about a certificate of appropriateness. And I think that goes if you go into a public hearing. At Bolster, with the way that we handle compliance, we try to avoid that at all costs. We try to abide with whatever landmarks is telling us, because we've seen that in the past that this is the best way to get through landmarks. If you go through the other process, we're talking that we could be stuck for months and months and months here. So we try to make sure that we also prioritize on your budget and your time there.
And to that point, and in terms of the quality of design and third parties, like I like to talk about expediters as like special mission agents, architects that are focused on say, Brooklyn townhouse renovations. And with Bolster, for example, have an army of consultants that are basically experts at getting the projects approved and depending on the type of project. So for example, you might try to get a superintendent project approved as a non-superintendent project, which is not landmarks, but it has a similar level of complexity. Then you go with an expediter that knows how to do that, of course, legally, but how to do it in a way in which you're likely to get the result that you want. So I think the end is to always go, like, in order to avoid waste of time and energy with anything to do with compliance, the answer is to have the right experts that have the right resources.
I was just going to say, I mean, the key here is to work with a team that is experienced. And that honestly is why Bolster's here, because I think many of you probably appreciate that it takes doing it to know the process and all the relationships involved. So, Anna, let's just go to the beginning of a project. Like, who should a homeowner hire first when it comes to a renovation?
That's a great question. I saw that you had it as well. And I would like to basically explain that, in the traditional model, homeowners go to an architect first, and then go through the traditional design, bid, build process, in which, again, they go through a design and then they tender to many different contractors. They get many different estimates, and then they try to compare them apples to apples, which is impossible. And then architects end up leveling the estimates and also kind of like struggle doing that. At that point, you may or may not have to engineer the project to bring the cost down, and you may or may not know the cost of completing the project, because oftentimes you get an estimate and there are change orders throughout the construction process. So homeowners know the starting price at construction, but they don't know the ending price at construction. If you flip that on its head, and what we've tried to do at Bolster is to basically empower homeowners to understand their project from the beginning. And we do that with a series of tools that follow an integrated design and build approach. And the interesting thing here is that what we do is work on the sketches like we mentioned before, and then price again at design documentation, which is kind of at the middle of the road of the project, where you have the big idea, but let's say maybe you're going through DOB compliance, and let's say you don't have all your specifications. And then we price again at construction documentation. So at that point, the project kind of follows a curve like the New York stock market, right? We can see that the project might go up and we want it to go down, and we're able to adjust the levers in order to end up at the price in which we want to complete the project right at the end of design. So in a way with Bolster, you know how much you're gonna spend, before you start construction rather than at the end of construction. So from my point of view, and speaking to also older architects like the beautiful New York architects that have been doing this for a very long time, and some of whom are not in Bolster, the integrated approach is really the way to go, for the very simple reason that you're getting real-time pricing on your project before you have completed the design. In addition to that, with Bolster and what we've developed over the years is the Bolster Promise, which guarantees that the project is completed to budget. So the key thing here, again, goes back to, you know, finding the team that you have a great chemistry with, which cannot be underestimated, but also, like you said in the beginning, Josh, being data-driven and understanding really how your project stacks up granularly as well as the big vision. I think that's super important. Whomever you choose that gives you that. Doesn't have to be Bolster, but I think those are important things to consider.
So let's stay on the topic of cost, because obviously everybody cares about cost. Jeronimo, how much does it cost to gut renovate a typical Brooklyn townhouse or brownstone?
I mean, obviously the prices can range, right? But I would say that our average cost to renovate and a full gut reno is usually 1.5. That comes at 1.5 million, which is typically between 400 to 500 per square foot. And I think the reference that homeowners should always take, particularly from examples like this, is the per square footage cost, because it will always vary according to the size of their own house and the complexity. But a high complexity project like a townhome or a brownstone in Brooklyn, I think you're gonna be looking at numbers between $400 and $500 per square foot. That is very important to know, Josh, that that's all in. This includes your appliances, your finishes, your fixtures, your lighting, your architect even. So that's really the way that we price at Bolster. That's what it allows us. We're giving you the full price here for the full cost of your renovation.
Anna, anything you want to add on that?
I'd say every renovation is different. I think, you know, some of the properties that we have renovated in Brooklyn have beautiful interiors, and we have focused on preserving those, and they're not, as it were, full guts. But like Jeronimo and Julieta were saying, the very important thing to always consider in these properties is that you will be upgrading the mechanicals. You will likely add HVAC, because like in the types of properties that we do, everybody wants an HVAC system. You will definitely have reinforcement and structural issues, because you want to do it once and you want to do it right. And again, if a homeowner has, let's say, a budget of $1 million, then there are options in which, you know, you can phase a project. So for example, you could focus on the infrastructure first and do all the millwork later. There's many ways to actually use money smartly. I tell people that tiles, for example, are much of a muchness. You can have beautiful Subway $3 tiles in a herringbone pattern that look as good as $150 marble tiles, right? So another thing I like to tell people is, like, you know, you might have Prada shoes and a Prada bag, but you're wearing a Gap t-shirt and Gap jeans. It's the same with a renovation. It's about using the money smartly. And again, we go back to investing in the property. The way to think about the cost of the renovation, or the way in which we work at Bolster, is also like making sure that you're doing the math, that you're gonna stay in the property for long enough that if you're investing a huge amount of money, you don't have a sunk cost if and when you want to sell the property, you know, at the end of 10 years or 20 years. So if you're doing a large investment, a recommendation is always to speak to a real estate agent and get information from them as well. It always has to be an informed decision. Now, we've done also like townhouses in one of the most beautiful projects we had was in Harlem. And I say that it was beautiful because the property was beautiful, The homeowners were beautiful. They loved each other. And when there's love in a couple, it's just so nice. And or love in a family, right? It's so nice and it's such a pleasure to work with them. In that project, in order to hit their target budget, we left scope out. So we renovated the triplex, we didn't do the rental, and we left one bathroom out. And instead of blowing up the entire back of the house, we just used different kinds of windows, right? So again, every project is different. The most important thing is that you have a clear target budget and that your team is able to advise you on what you can do with it.
Excellent. Well, Julieta, there's money and then there's time, right? So talk to us about how long renovations typically take and what the process is.
Okay, well, naturally, it will depend on the extent of the renovation. If we talk about a gut renovation of a 4-story townhouse between 4,000 and 5,000 square feet, we're talking around 12 months to complete. This is only for the build phase and would not include any extensions. As you know, Bolster is a data-driven company and every renovation is unique. So it is very, very hard to establish a timeline without having the scope of work. Sometimes something to note is that COVID has affected the amount of time that we have to work on the site, because we have, for example, to clean the bathrooms 4 times a day. We have to keep a log of every visitor that comes into the job site, and you know, a lot of things around now, new things that we didn't have before. Another important thing to note is that if an extension is required in the project, we also have to be compliant in a different way, and the project becomes a superintendent project. Bolster is well versed on those projects, so we are confident in our processes. And however, in terms of time frame, homeowners need to consider that they need to hire the right team, because if the construction team is not compliant, the DOB can issue stop work orders, which add an indefinite amount of time to the project's duration.
So you touched on a little bit of the circumstances around COVID. Is there anything else that you can add to them? Is it safe now to do construction? Are there any other things that are put in place because of COVID?
Well, we are in a totally different world right now, and some things are still unknown for everyone. I think it's safe in a sense that we have to comply with all the DOB and the OSHA guidelines. If the family is in the house still, we need to protect them properly. We all need to, all the field people, everyone in the site needs to wear protective equipment and follow all the guidelines. That's basically what we need to do. For brownstone renovations, where the family is not there and the homeowners will be visiting the site 2 to 4 times a month, it's fine. Everybody's wearing protective gear, so they're safe. They're safe, and we really try to comply with everything that the DOB is requiring in the job sites now.
Great, thank you.
And Josh, to give you an idea or jump quickly on that, like we're now required to, for example, do deep cleaning of the bathrooms, clean them 4 times a day. Like it's just a really intense effort, log everybody in and out. In Manhattan, of course, everybody has to register. If it's an apartment building, we have to comply with the elevator use, with the capacity on the actual site, number of people there, and we have to comply with the elevator usage. And I'd like to segue into Dan's question here about how do you feel about the homeowner living in the house while the renovations are being made? Compliance-wise, we require a TPP, which is basically we have to file in order to be able to have the homeowner there. And having the homeowner there adds to the risk of COVID. if they have children especially. And it also adds to the sort of like ability for the team to streamline the construction work. Now, if the homeowners, let's say, are living in a triplex and we're renovating the rental, that's totally fine because it can be self-contained. But if a lot of people do ask us this question, you know, could you come in and do the renovation while I stay in this room and I'll be quiet and it'll be fine. The problem is not whether they'll feel comfortable or not. The problem is that the construction team might end up taking longer, and it's going to be a sort of like really unpleasant process for everybody involved. There's no way to have a pleasant renovation if everything's covered in dust. And for the construction team, if you have a polite construction team that cares about you, they're going to be actually tiptoeing around your things and tiptoeing around you. And with COVID, it's an extra layer of complexity. So I would not recommend it.
Anna, can you touch on design build, what that is?
Well, design and build, we talked a little bit about it. Design and build is the integrated approach that you have, whereby you have a design builder firm that looks at every aspect of your project from the get-go. In Bolster, we are the GC. A lot of people are like, who's the GC and who are you going to subcontract? I'm actually the GC. I have the GC license. It's unique in New York City for a woman to have a license. Like the DOB clapped when I got it. Like I got this like, you know, little dance at the DOB. We are the GC. Our team on the field is part of us. They're on our payroll. We only subcontract like the trades, the electrical, the plumbing, and so on. So a design builder, from my point of view, or the way I like to see it, is both accountable and responsible for the entirety of your project. You cannot point a finger. If you imagine two cowboys coming against each other in like in the Wild West, like you all have your guns, right? You have the architect, you have the contractor, then the homeowner comes with a third gun. With us, we have the gun. We're responsible. Like you can't say, oh, well, the architect didn't do this and guess what? She missed something. We take pride in handling the process from beginning to end. So I think that's a major differentiator.
I know you touched on this a little bit before, but what would you say is a typical renovation for Bolster?
So a typical renovation is for homeowners that are renovating their primary residence. They're going to live there for between 10 to 20 years, maybe more. They are putting a lot of their dreams into it. Like we said, financially important, like a lot of their finances too. Typically, we work in Park Slope, Clinton Hill, Windsor Terrace. We've done Fort Greene, a lot of areas, Brooklyn Heights in Brooklyn, different properties. There is no typical property in Brooklyn, I'd like to say, like, or in New York. A lot of the projects here in Manhattan are Upper West Side, Upper East Side. But I'd like to say that the thing that has the commonality between all the projects is that we work with homeowners that are seeking to have an open dialogue, that are seeking to workshop their projects with us, that are loving their property and will love their property. They're not flipping, they're not developers. And, you know, we work with a lot of families. The really cute thing about what we do, or the really important thing, is that we always come at an important junction in people's lives. Either you're renovating because you're adapting for a new phase because you're elderly and you need to modify the home, modify the cabinets, modify the bathrooms and make it safer, or you're having a baby, or you just bought the home that, you know, you plan to live with your young family. So we come in at very interesting junctions, and that's actually very, very nice.
So, you know what I'd love you to do is to share your time in Mexico City with our audience and how you got into the home renovation business and obviously started Bolster.
So in Mexico City, it's a long time ago. in Mexico City, there was a contest from one of Mexico's largest mortgage lender called Infonavit. They're also Latin America's largest mortgage lender. It's a parastatal company, a little bit of Freddie Mae or Freddie Mac, the institutions that you have here that provide loans. And Infonavit had a problem. They needed to give renovation loans without risk. And they launched a contest to see who could come up with an idea. And, you know, myself and 3 other partners competed on this and provided a model. And so did Comex and Cemex and another large company. And these are like publicly traded companies. And we were the underdog and we won, which was very cool. And basically the model was very simple. The bank would lend the money went into an escrow, and we developed a technology platform whereby the contractor used to get paid as the contractor made progress on site. And the contractor had a personal liability bond attached to every project. So say if you were doing a $500,000 project, you had $500,000 of your own personal assets on the line. And this basically leveled the play field for both the bank and the homeowner working together with the loan and the contractor. And it also took the risk away out of the project, the risk from the project. And when we moved to New York, we were actually asked to implement the same model and create a program where we could take the risk out of the renovation process. We always have been technology driven. So we developed our own product and we developed a bond. And the bond meant that contractors here in the US were also personally liable for the renovation projects. As we evolved the process, when we launched, we were like, well, when things go wrong in your renovation, then you can always call a bond and you'll be protected. It's a little bit like selling insurance, right? And people didn't want to think about that. They didn't want to think that things were going to go wrong, even though renovations often go wrong, right? So we pivoted and decided to create the Bolster Promise and become fully accountable and do a vertical integration, what it's known in business as a vertical integration, which means that we became, you know, accountable for everything. And we launched the Bolster Promise, which is unique in the industry, which means that whenever we go into build and we open the fabric of the property, we're responsible for every aspect of the property. So for example, Fort Greene, we opened up a wall and then, you know, the cement was ash, like, you know, the wall was so old that, you know, we had to completely reinforce the wall. Or in Clinton Hill, the ceiling was actually just like so old, it was also collapsing. So we had to basically do an extra reinforcement. I mean, the stories go on and on. The Promise has covered a lot of issues with properties in Manhattan and Brooklyn. And we take pride in that because we're the construction experts. So we know, a homeowner is not gonna know, right? How are they supposed to know? They have a job. So that's how Bolster was born.
Terrific, I love the story. Talk to us a little bit about what homeowners need to know about permits and codes and laws when it comes to renovating.
I'd say they need to have the right team because honestly, I'm constantly learning. Regulations are constantly changing, especially in Brooklyn. Like Julieta was saying, there's a lot of inspectors now that are looking at the renovations very closely. And so it's very important to have the right teams. We have our own consultants that help us with compliance and we know a thing or two. So for a homeowner to understand every aspect of compliance with a renovation will be very, very hard. The rules, the golden rules are as follows. Avoid risk by doing everything legally, by doing your due diligence to ensure that the team that you're hiring is doing everything legally, that is up to date with all the regulations. Do your homework in terms of who they are and verify, you know, their references and you know, I think if you're confident, you get enough references and you know that they understand and they've done the types of projects that you want to do recently, because things change a lot, right? So Brooklyn in 2019 is not the same as Brooklyn in 2017 or even 2020 with COVID. So you need to be sure that they have up-to-date experience. And that's all you need to know. Due diligence, that's it.
This was terrific information, and I thank all of you. But we have a bunch of questions here, so I'd love to maybe touch on some of these questions here. One was just in terms of, you know, can people reach out to Bolster as they're making an offer, or is it really once they have already taken ownership of a property?
I love that question. I know Nicole is going to be very happy about that question. She's our marketing VP of marketing. We are actually launching a renovation calculator very, very soon, likely in September. It's made with an algorithm from all our data, from all our projects. We will certainly distribute it with you guys. So if you're looking to buy a property, you can just type in some fields and then get an approximate cost for the renovation that is very, very accurate. It's between 3 and 9% accurate.
Wow.
So you will have what you need. It's unique in its kind, and you will have what you need to bid. You can definitely contact us when you're looking to buy. We always love meeting homeowners, but I think the renovation calculator is gonna free everybody up to like make the right decisions.
If you allow me to add there, Josh, I think that covers Wayne's question, obviously, on when is it a good time. But I would also like to address, I lose him in the question here, but I think he was asking oh, here it is, Jeff Phillips. He was asking, what do we use the data for? This is exactly what we use, all of the data driven. We've been working really hard to put all of these models together, as Anna was mentioning, to get information that is live information for you guys as homeowners without having to go through the entire process of getting bids and getting requests. This actually helps you get a great reference at whatever stage you might be in the renovation, making it public for everyone out there. So that's exactly what we do with the data. We don't do any mean things with it. We're actually just trying to create better tools out there that will help everyone, help every single question that you might have out there. So that was great, tackling 2 questions. I'm also trying to tackle everybody's questions as I see them. I've already answered some, but I'll try to answer the others as well as we're going through on text if we don't get to go over all of them.
Yeah, I just want to also let the audience know that you know, we'll be sending all of their information out to you, so that way you can be in touch with them after, because I recognize that everybody has very specific questions to each one of their projects. I see a question in here, maybe we can just touch on this one. I guess the question was in frame of, you know, is it only gut renovations, or does Bolster do other types of small renovations for homeowners?
We do cosmetic, guts, partial renovations. Every project is different. Yeah.
So everybody wants to expand their brownstone. That's always a popular item. Everybody doesn't have enough room in New York City, that's for sure. Question that came in here actually from a couple of people is there a ballpark cost to expand the back of a brownstone? I have to imagine that there's so many variables, but you know, what would you guys say to that?
I would say send us your project. We will contact you. We will discuss your project specifically, and we can give you, we're data driven. So we would like to look at, like Josh said, an extension it can be anything. So we would like to talk about it. A lot of Brooklynites love having the indoor outdoor lifestyle. It's beautiful to be able to open up at the back. So contact us and we will help you specifically.
There's a question here about working with architects. They're asking, does Bolster typically work in conjunction with an owner's architect?
We don't promote this, but we do build only projects too. We do primarily design and build. But, you know, we get a lot of projects that, you know, the homeowners want to work with us. So actually, Jeronimo can take this question. We have a process where we have a checklist where we get all the different construction documents we need from the architect at the behest of the homeowner. And then we work with the architect to find any gaps of information that we might have, because we like pricing every single thing. And then once we have all the information, we're able to provide our fixed price estimate. Do you want to go deeper into that, Jero?
Sure. I think to answer Jorma's question here, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but that's completely right. So we do design build. We do offer all of the design services in-house, as well as the approvals and the permitting, but we do work with an owner's architect. We do have some requests to that because it's not our typical model. So we do like to have all of the information and being involved with all of the partners. Even though if they're their own architect, at Bolster, it is very important that we all work as a team. Our goal here is trying to meet the homeowner's requirements. So I think it's very important that we're all aligned there. But that should cover that question, definitely.
I think we touched on a lot of these. And again, you know, many of the other questions are very particular, I think, to everyone's project. So, you know, I just want to thank Bolster and the whole team for answering all these questions and addressing what is such an important topic for anyone looking to do a renovation. And we'll be sure to make contacts with everyone and connect everyone with our panelists today. So thank you so much, Ana, Jeronimo, Julieta. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you to Bolster.
Thank you very much for your time. And thank you everybody that asked the question and got involved with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Be
Thank
safe.
you very much. We love having been here with you. I'm just going to very quickly answer. A lady was asking whether she should go to the showroom. Yes, always take your sketch, always touch everything, see everything. You're going to live with it. You can't take a tap away once you purchase it. Always tape the sizes with blue tape. If you're unsure, just make sure you measure things like a sink, how deep it is, how big it is, how wide it is. And then the other question, should I do bits and bobs or tackle everything at once? Tackle everything at once. And with that, goodbye. Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Be well.
Appreciate it. Bye.